My name is Emily. In my late 30s, I juggle a full-time office job with helping out at my family's liquor store. During weekdays, I work in the office until 6 p.m., then spend my evenings managing the accounts and operations at the store. Our liquor store was once a thriving business, supplying alcoholic beverages to hotel banquet halls, pubs, sushi restaurants, and more. We enjoyed a near monopoly in the neighborhood as there were no other liquor stores around. However, recent years have brought significant changes. New regulations limiting the hours alcohol can be served have drastically reduced consumption. Banquets have become rare, and pubs have even stopped serving alcohol in the evenings. These changes have led to serious financial difficulties for our family business. As the eldest daughter, with my sister Noah already married, the responsibility of our struggling family liquor store fell on my shoulders. My parents were terrible at managing finances, and their outdated business practices only made things worse as the store's fortunes declined. The existing debt ballooned without us realizing, bringing us to the brink of bankruptcy. Determined not to close the store, my father refused to give up, so I decided to move back home 2 years ago to help. However, the income from the liquor store alone wasn't enough to cover our debts, so I continued my day job and assisted at the store in the evenings. Every weekday evening after my office job, I'd return home to find my father in the store, the shutters open, holding his favorite beer. "Ah, finally you're back," he'd say, greeting me with a hopeful smile. "Dad, are you drinking again?" "These bottles aren't selling. I'm just drinking them." My father, having consumed quite a bit of alcohol, reeked of it, and his speech was slurred. "Dad, that's enough. Don't drink the merchandise." He responded loudly, "Don't lecture me, the daughter who can't even get married." With that, he stumbled into the house. I cleaned the cluttered store and dived into the books for the day. Dinner didn't happen until after 9 p.m. when I finished the store's closing tasks. I'm used to it, but I still get hungry. Since my parents had already gone to bed, I headed to the kitchen to make instant ramen and started preparing breakfast for the next morning. My mom prefers bread for breakfast and my dad likes rice, so every day I prepare both a Western and Japanese meal. This is how my day ends. On the weekends, when I finally have a day off, I set my alarm for 10 a.m., hoping to sleep in. However, my mother wakes me up at 8 a.m. "Hey, heat up your father's miso soup quickly." "Why?" "You can do that, Mom." I refuse. "Why should I have to do the housework when you're here?" "Now get up." My mother seems to mistake me for a housemaid. True, I've always been meticulous and enjoyed cooking and cleaning, so I naturally took on the housework. But ever since high school, my mother, who came to rely heavily on me, dumped everything from taking care of my sister to housework on me. Fed up with this situation, I got a job and started the work I do now as soon as I graduated. In my teens, work was incredibly tough, and there were many times I wanted to give up. But each time, my seniors at work supported me, helping me to keep going. Unable to enjoy a leisurely morning, I would wake up, finish the housework, and go straight to work at the liquor store. I began shouldering the family debt when the business started to struggle, a total of $3 million a year. Frankly, it's not an easy sum to manage. I lived frugally to repay the debt, using only $1 cosmetics from the dollar store and packing homemade lunches. I endured the cold as long as I could to save on heating bills. In a bid to pull us out of this situation, I took it upon myself to help rebuild our family business. I believed that just supplying alcohol to local businesses wasn't going to cut it. I suggested to my dad that we leverage the internet, but he was resistant, saying, "Our old way is the best way." "I'm not the problem, the world is." While I was deep in thought about the business, my mom would nudge me with household chores. "Is lunch ready yet? Did you hang the laundry?" Juggling these tasks left me with little time to devise and execute a plan to revitalize the business, always keeping me a step behind. After considerable effort, I successfully launched online sales using the internet, focusing on rare alcoholic beverages available at our store. With restrictions limiting people's movement, this treasure hunt-like approach to online sales became popular, and our business began to thrive. Simultaneously, our store's online presence attracted more foot traffic. My already limited free time dwindled further, leaving me with hardly any time to myself. I kept pushing forward, driven by the goal of alleviating my parents' debt. Finally, things were turning around, and my parents were becoming more financially stable. Around that time, I received the news. Noah's expecting a baby. "Congratulations. That's wonderful. A grandchild." I beamed with joy, but my mother's expression turned cold. That's why you need to leave this house. What? I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. Confused, I looked at my mom, and my dad, who had been eavesdropping with a drink in hand, chimed in. Noah and his wife will be moving in here. Pack your things and go. But I came back to take care of both of you. My pleas fell on deaf ears. My sister had always been carefree, rarely lifting a finger around the house. Despite her initial ambition to become a preschool teacher, she dropped out of college after just a few months, claiming boredom. Even after marrying, she continued to rely on our parents' financial support. Her husband's sporadic employment meant they lived off our parents' money and occasional part-time earnings, yet they seemed to enjoy a comfortable lifestyle, taking trips here and there. I had my suspicions but chose to ignore them. Suddenly being told to leave the house left me scrambling to find a new place. Busy as I was, I pleaded with my parents for at least 2 months' grace period. I put the liquor store work on hold and began the search for a new home. One day, my dad called my workplace. Emily, what the hell are you doing? The store is too busy. Come home right now. No, I'm at work. Ask Noah, I replied, exasperated by his attempt to dump more responsibilities on me after telling me to leave home. Frustrated, I hung up the phone. A few minutes later, my boss approached me. Emily, your father's on the phone again. Again, I apologized for the inconvenience, I said, picking up the phone. My father started repeating his earlier demands, his voice growing louder with each word. Emily, you can leave early today if you need to, my boss offered, sensing the situation's urgency. Despite having work to finish, I didn't want my father's incessant calls to disturb the office any longer, so I decided to leave early that day. Arriving at our family liquor store, I found my father drinking, even though we were still open for business. Drinking again instead of working? I exclaimed, my frustration evident. He shrugged off my accusation. Understanding the tastes of our products requires sampling, he insisted. You focus on your tasks. Realizing I wouldn't get through to him in his current state, I quietly began attending to the family business duties. From that point on, I juggled my job, household tasks, house hunting, and the responsibilities of running the liquor store, living an unimaginably hectic life. Then, one day, the stress became too much. I collapsed at work and woke up in a hospital bed. Jason, my colleague who had come with me, explained that I had fainted, hitting my head on the corner of my desk. As I gently touched the bandages wrapped around my head, I felt relieved. That was frightening. How are you feeling now? Better, I replied quietly. Tears welled up in my eyes at his kindness. Kindness had been a rare sight in my life over the past few years. At home, despite my efforts at the liquor store and with household chores, appreciation was scarce. Being constantly manipulated by my alcoholic father and self-centered mother had pushed me to my limits. Seeing me in this vulnerable state, Jason said, "You've worked incredibly hard. Soon, you won't have to worry about the house anymore. Let's take it easy from now on." Grateful for Jason's empathy, I nodded. Moving out was on the horizon. The thought of it gave me renewed strength to endure it a little longer. Finally, I found a house and began preparing to move out. Despite this, my parents incessantly nagged me to clean every nook and cranny of the house for my younger sister and her husband, who were moving in. Fed up with being the obedient daughter, I finally stood my ground. Why don't you handle it yourselves? It's not my responsibility anymore. My retort seemed to catch my parents off guard. My father responded sharply, "What's with the attitude? We'll be glad to be rid of someone like you." I have reached my limit with my unappreciative parents who never acknowledged my efforts. After I completed my move, my sister and her husband settled into our parents' house, and I finally felt liberated from their grip. During the weekdays, I focused on work, typically home before 8 p.m. Weekends became a cherished time for sleeping in, leisurely walks, shopping, and reclaiming precious moments for myself. Each day was a newfound joy. Then, 1 month later, a phone call left me bursting into laughter. What's going on with this month's debt payment? It was my mother suddenly calling in anger. Wait, a debt? Wasn't that created by you guys? Despite all the effort I put into rebuilding the liquor store business and handling all the house chores, who was it that kicked me out for their convenience? I didn't give my mom a chance to respond. And in the background, Noah chimed in. Please help us out. I had no idea about the debt. I thought the liquor store was thriving and I could have an easy life coming back home. His pleas continued, but life wasn't going to be that simple. All I could do was laugh at the self-centeredness of my family, now including my sister and her husband. Four adults should be able to manage their finances, right? When I mentioned this, I could hear my mom and Noah arguing loudly on the other end of the phone. They hurled insults, blaming each other for their inaction, completely forgetting I was still on the line. The argument escalated for several minutes. As I listened, disappointment in my family deepened, strengthening my resolve to distance myself from them. My dad, constantly drinking and avoiding work. My mom, unwilling to handle household chores. Noah, preferring not to work and relying on her parents. And Noah's husband, equally uninterested in employment. With such an attitude among four adults, the income from the liquor store couldn't possibly cover the nearly $1,000 in monthly debt payments and living expenses. Fed up, I declared, I don't want to be involved anymore. By the way, I'm getting married soon and plan to move overseas in a few months. Don't rely on me anymore. Upon hearing this, my mom reacted hastily. Overseas? You must have a lot of money. Don't go overseas. Come back home. I reached my breaking point and hung up on her. They kept calling, but I refused to answer any more calls from my family. The next day, I changed my cell phone number and asked my workplace to block any calls intended for me. Being in America allowed me to create distance from my family, and with the support of those around me, I began to rebuild my life. Several months later, just before leaving America, I received word from a relative that the online liquor store business I had built was in trouble. Mismanagement had led to delayed shipments, incorrect orders, and a flood of customer complaints. Negative word of mouth spread quickly, tarnishing the store's reputation and impacting sales. Concurrently, my father's daily drinking habits became a local talking point, casting a shadow over the store's image and reducing customer traffic. Sales plummeted, and the store, which had been on the path to financial stability, was forced to shut down. The four individuals, now lacking credibility, struggled to find employment locally. Unable to repay their debts, they lost the store and the house they had used as collateral, leaving them without means of income or a place to stay. After losing their home, the family of four desperately tried to reach out to me. Fortunately, my extended family, who had become my allies, protected my whereabouts, allowing me to avoid contact with them. Despite Noah's wife being pregnant and nearing her due date, all four adults remained unemployed. Their daily quarrels, discussions on survival strategies, and reluctance to seek employment eventually devolved into petty arguments and blame games. Meanwhile, I married Jason, my coworker who had stood by me during my hospitalization. Our bond grew stronger through that experience. Around the same time, we were both offered positions at our company's overseas branch. These circumstances led to our relationship and our decision to marry. After dedicating so much time to rebuilding my parents' business, I now cherish the moments with my husband and strive to balance our work and home life together. For years, my family took my sacrifices for granted. They neglected to put in any effort, relying on others for everything, with only their own benefit in mind. It was predictable what would happen to people who never bothered to try. I am grateful to those who rescued me. Using my family as a negative example, I strive to live a fulfilling life, considering not only my own interests but also those of others.